Good morning, everybody. Good morning. And welcome to Channing Unitarian Universalist Church. We're glad you joined us for worship today. Whoever you are, whatever your theological, spiritual, political, sexual, or racial orientation or gender identity, you are welcome to worship here and become a part of this community. Are there any announcements this morning? Julie's not here, so that means there are 0 announcements. Getting a moment to see if she but we can come back to it if we need to. This is week 1 of Advent, so we are going to light the first Advent candle. I'm going to grab the words which I left in my bag, so just a moment. The placing of candles upon a circle of evergreens is an age-old tradition. Lighting additional candles each day or week as the light wanes has been part of human rituals for centuries upon centuries. We are warmed by the glow. We are reminded that the wheel of the season will turn and brilliant lengthening days will return. The original Advent wreath in the Christian tradition dates back to the 16th century and included a candle for each of the 24 days leading up to Christmas. No wonder I keep calling it an Advent calendar. For us, here in this time, the circle of evergreens reminds us that life and love will never end. We light candles each week with anticipation as we know a new season will soon be here. Days will become longer, and we know the warmth of the candles will soon be replaced by the warmth of the sun. Week 1 is hope. The first Advent candle is the candle of hope. Hope is the motivating force that moves us through times of despair. The days are getting shorter, the weather colder, and the nights longer. Hope tells us that longer days are ahead, that new life will emerge, and that we need to hold on just a little longer. With hope, we begin our journey toward the sun and the new life it brings. We light the candle. And with that, I'll turn it over to Vaughn Keller, who is our visiting speaker.
Thanks, Lauren. We're between the holidays. The nights are longer, colder. The world and our country, not simply seem but are out of joint. There's a stirring, though, always that stirring that brings us together, whether with family, with friends, or here in this sanctuary. It's a stirring of hope, of kindness, and joy. We reach out to one another, as we should, as we must, to laugh together, to cry together, to work together. We're not alone. We are together. Together here. Together now. Together in hope, in kindness, and in joy. Please stand as you are willing and able as we light the chalice.
Please join me in reading the words found in your order of service. May the lighting of this flame
Bind us together in peace.
May it remind us to open our minds and our hearts to this special time in God's life. And our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine, thus to be covenant with each other and with God.
Please remain standing for our opening hymn, number 370 in Great Hymnal. All people down on earth are welcome. While you're standing, say hello to one another. Hug, kiss, shake hands, whatever you want to do.
Good morning.
Now is the opportunity in our service to share those joys that we'd like everyone to be happy about with us, and to share concerns that we'd like support. So please raise your hand if you have a joy or concern you'd like to share.
A candle of concern for a family member, Marissa, who was very badly injured in a car accident over Thanksgiving.
Julie asked us to light 2 candles, one for Jude, who is having back issues, and one for Rick. He's running a half marathon right now.
Good temperature.
In the rain.
Joy for this conversation, and I guess a prayer for the sick and suffering that are able to become.
I'll lay one for my 15-year-old who has his first quote-unquote official job, though it's working for his aunt and uncle at the Rockland Garden Center, helping with trees. He's not there today because it's raining, but he's supposed to work on Sundays. So if you need a tree, go next Sunday and look for the tall child who looks like me, taller and skinnier. I'll light one last candle for all those joys and concerns felt deeply within our hearts.
Let's take a moment for silent meditation. Just sitting in the silence, eyes closed, breathing easily, feeling our breath come in, bringing us energy, letting it fill us. Then easily releasing it again out into the world. Taking in from the world, releasing out into the world. Our breath gives us life. And in the quiet, let our thoughts turn to loved ones, those who are here with us today, those who are someplace else, those who have left us. And let our attention come to them, especially at this holiday season. And let us wish them happiness. Let us wish them joy. And as we think about our own holidays, those that are coming, let us not hesitate to put aside all the hustle and the bustle, but also to join into the spirit of Advent, which is a spirit of reflection, of anticipation, of looking forward. As we breathe in and we breathe out, let us feel the peace of this place and of just being. And let us join together in singing the Spirit of Life in number 123. Your freedom.
Now is the moment in our service where we will collect our offering.
Listen to the words of this. They are so Unitarian. It's Carrie Newhouser, and the title of the song is Up. Carrie Newhouser, I'm sorry.
Sometimes you gotta trust whatever people pray. Just put it on the table. To one me. Don't find a mess. But you here. Been from the cold dark. On the chair. Whatever you want it. It's what we'll give. It's made us separate on the edge of a heartbreak. Trying to get those energy, cause you had not been at home today. Aubrey brought home cakes, cookies and a fry. All hesitate at the door, before he finally walks inside. Just put it on the table. It's too wide.
Please stand as you're willing and able, and join me in singing Spirit of Truth for our dedication of gifts. We'll sing it on Keller. Spirit of truth, of life, of power, we bring ourselves as gifts to thee. Oh, find our hearts this sacred hour, in faith and hope and charity. Amen. The risk with Dr. Keller is the random key that I start singing.
Please be seated. Our reading for today is taken from the book of Joy. That's literally the title of the book of Joy. Two spiritual giants, 5 days, one timeless question. Nobel Peace Prize laureates, both of them laureates, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, survived more than 50 years of exile and the soul-crushing violence of oppression, apartheid. Despite their hardships, or they would say because of them, they are two of the most joyful people on the planet. In April of 2015, Archbishop Tutu traveled to the Dalai Lama's home in Dharamsala, India, to celebrate His Holiness's 80th birthday and to create what they hoped would be a gift for us. They look back on their long lives to answer a single burning question. How do we find joy in the face of life's inevitable suffering? They traded intimate stories, teased each other continually, and shared their spiritual practices. By the end of the week, filled with laughter and punctuated with tears, these two global leaders had stared into the abyss and despair of our time and revealed how to live life brimming with joy. I'm going to read to you some of the quotations from that meeting. I'm not going to tell you who they came from, although some of these will be pretty easy to figure it out. As I read them, just let them strike you. Don't try to analyze them. Just let them come over you. We are fragile creatures, and it is from this weakness, not despite it, that we discover the possibility of true joy. I always say to people, you have to pay more attention to the mental level of joy and happiness. Not just physical pleasure, but satisfaction at the level of the mind. This is true joyfulness. Many people are waiting around for happiness or joy. When they get a job, when they fall in love, when they get rich, then they'll be happy. Then they'll have joy. Life is not like that. In short, the more we heal our own pain, the more we can turn to the pain of others. The way we heal our own pain is actually by turning to the pain of others. It is a virtuous cycle. The more we turn towards others, the more joy we experience, and the more we can bring joy to others. You are made for perfection, but you're not yet perfect. You're a masterpiece in the making. The true measure of spiritual development is how one confronts one's own mortality. The best way is when one is able to approach death with joy. The next best way is without fear. The third best way is at least not to have any regrets. Without meaning, when suffering seems senseless, we can easily become embittered. But when we can find a shred of meaning or redemption in our suffering, it can ennoble us, as it did for Nelson Mandela. Laugh at yourself and don't be so pompous and serious. If you start looking for the humor in life, you'll find it. You'll stop asking, why me? And start recognizing that life happens to all of us. Acceptance, whether we believe in God or not, allows us to move into the fullness of joy. It allows us to engage with life on its own terms, rather than rail against the fact that life is not as we would wish. Impermanence is the nature of life. Gratitude helps us to catalog, celebrate, and rejoice in each day and each moment before they slip through the vanishing hourglass of experience. Please stand as you are willing and able, and let's join together in singing Just As Long As I Have Breath, hymn number 6. Please be seated. This morning is the first Sunday of Advent, and I bring you tidings of great joy. It is Christmas after all. I am referring to the gospel of a couple of old dudes. I admire them greatly. The Dalai Lama, His Holiness, Bishop Desmond Tutu. I have somewhat of a relationship with Desmond Tutu. It comes through a couple of different people. One is that I belong to a group that meets every Friday or every other Friday at noon on Zoom. We call ourselves the Old Codger, the Codger Conflict. And because we're meeting on Zoom, one of our members is David Smith, who lives in the Cotswolds in England. And as a young curate, he worked for Desmond Tutu in South Africa for about 20 years. And so I heard from David a lot of Desmond Tutu's stories. And the word gospel means good news. And they do have good news. It's possible to live in a state of joy. Not happiness, that's transient, but joy, which is a state of being. It's the way we experience life. That's good news, don't you think? That's possible? Are they for real? We can actually live on a day-by-day basis in a state of joy? That's heavy stuff. Real heavy stuff. Now, there's a backstory, of course. The two of them, a Buddhist and a Christian. Appropriate for a Unitarian church, right? They met over at different conferences over the years. And a journalist, Doug Adams, thought to himself, let's get the two of them together for a week and let's just overhear what they want to say to one another. And so Doug made that happen. And as a result, he produced a documentary. Have any of you seen the documentary? It's on Netflix. And also the Book of Joy. One of the things that, if you watch the documentary, it's going to knock you silly, is how silly these two guys are. They laugh, they joke, they tease. I highly recommend both. What's the other thing that really struck me when I watched them together was their humility. Incredible humility. One of the facets of the book that's not in the documentary that Doug brings in is all of the scientific findings that support what these two were saying to one another. Now, I'm trained as a scientist, and so you bring science and religion together for me, and I'm a Unitarian Universalist Advocate. Now, that's sort of my sweet spot. Now, these men have lived, learned, coped, and been leaders in obviously very tumultuous times. Desmond Tutu grew up in apartheid. The Dalai Lama has been exiled from his home for years. Now, they're not experiences that one would typically think of leading to joy, but they did. And this may be the main lesson here. Suffering does not preclude joy as a life experience. That's major when you really think about it. It's hard for me to imagine their ability to transcend that experience, and yet they did. Now, down at First Parish in Plymouth, I led a book group on the Book of Joy. We met for 2 nights to talk about the book. And at the end of our discussions, I asked folks what they found to be the book's most critical aspect. What did they really take away from the book? And they said that it was the last section of the book, which is entitled The Pillars of Joy. The 8 things that made joy possible. I thought I would share those with you this morning. Let me suggest a little context though. With the holidays coming up, including the song, Joy to the World, there's an urge to manufacture some joy, a kind of expectation that this will be a joyful season. Sometimes it works, often it doesn't. So perhaps we might approach the holidays a little bit differently this year, in the spirit of Advent, really as a time of reflection on the presence of joy in our lives. How do we bring more joy into our lives? Now, if we are going to be reflective, these two would suggest the following. 8 disciplines, 8 habits. They divide them in 2. They call them the habits of the mind and the habits of the heart. 4 of each. I don't expect that you're going to remember them. There's no test at the end. However, as I go through them, if you find yourself saying to yourself, well, maybe I could do some work on that one. Just let that be. Just let it happen. When I first read them, a couple of them stood up and said, okay, Vaughn, this is where you need to focus. We begin with the habits of the mind. What's interesting is that the Dalai Lama was especially forceful on these, the habits of the mind. Disciplining the mind until we habitually view the world in a specific way. We can create habits. Now, the first of the habits is perspective. Bishop Tutu tells the story of sitting in traffic and becoming irritated. We've all done that. We can create habits, though. As he started looking around, rather than being ticked off, he realized that everybody else was in the same place. And he started thinking about what was taking place in each of those cars. Disease, loneliness, anger, happiness. He started to decenter, not make himself central in the universe, but really regain perspective on just what his position was in the universe. It's not dissimilar from the experiences of the astronauts, which they have constantly reported, that when they have been up there and they look down and they see Earth, they have a whole new perspective on life. A whole new perspective on how basically we're here for a short time. In a much larger cosmos, in a much larger world. That's a discipline to maintain that perspective. Associated with it is the second habit, humility. The Dalai Lama offers the Tibetan prayer, just going to put it for you. Whenever I see someone, may I never feel superior. From the depth of my heart, may I be able to really appreciate the other person in front of me. This one is often a struggle for moi. I am of the liberal educated class, and I belong to a religious denomination along with you all, whose roots are in a very elitist point of view called Unitarianism. Unitarians are pretty elitist. As an example, and I'm sure you've heard this, they're a Unitarian, they just don't know it. Have any of you ever heard that before? Okay. That is so arrogant, isn't it? So the second discipline of the mind is humility. Getting over ourselves. The third is humor. And these two have it in abundance. At times they act like 8-year-olds. If you look at the documentary, you will see them literally acting like 8-year-olds. Humus is the root word, interestingly, for both humility and humor. Humus of the earth. Laughing at oneself, at the absurdities of life, and laughing with one another. As the bishop says, come stand next to me and let's laugh at me together. Let's laugh at me together. Ow. I think the question for us is, am I teasable like that? Am I open to being teased? Or is my ego so fragile? Am I so uncomfortable with my absurdities that I can't laugh at myself or enjoy you laughing with me? Now, teasing obviously can be pretty cruel, but they're talking about a different kind of teasing. They're talking about a shared perception of absurdities. The fourth discipline of the mind is acceptance. This, of course, is one of the core disciplines of Buddhism, from the Dalai Lama. You can judge and criticize your neighbor. You can live in anxiety and despair that you'll never have a good relationship with them. Or you can accept that your relationship with your neighbor is difficult and you would like to improve it. You may or may not succeed. All you can do is try. You can't control your neighbor, but you do have some control over your thoughts and feelings. Instead of anger, fear, hatred, and contempt, you can feel compassion for them, kindness towards them, and warm-heartedness towards them. Or, why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what is the use of being unhappy if it cannot be remedied? Sounds stunningly familiar to the serenity prayer of Reinhold Niebuhr. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I wonder if repeating that prayer every day as we approach the holidays might be a good start to having a joyous holiday season. Okay, John? 4 disciplines of the mind: perspective, humility, humor, and acceptance. Now that we have our heads on straight, let's take a look at the 4 habits of the heart. The first of these is forgiveness. Bishop Judah says, forgiveness is the only way to heal ourselves and to be free from the past. The only way. Without forgiveness, we remain tethered to the person who has harmed us. We are bound to the chains of bitterness. That person is our jailer. When we recall Tutu's work on reconciliation as a apartheid ending, we would be wise to listen to this man. He is a true expert. He empowered people to forgive, and a new country was born out of that forgiveness. That's heady stuff. A new country was born because people were able to forgive one another. That's amazing. Given what is taking place right now in Israel and Palestine, can you imagine the reconciliation that will be needed for them to find peace? As Gandhi said, an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. Forgiveness is a choice of the heart. So as we approach the holiday seasons, who amongst our family, amongst our friends, who we want to forgive for slights, for wrongs, big or small? The second habit of the heart is gratitude. The Dalai Lama says, every day think as you wake up, I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life. I am not going to waste it. Impermanence is the nature of existence. Daily we are losing and gaining. Gratitude is taking stock. Sometimes it is comparative. There's nothing wrong with that. Bishop Tudor points out that there's nothing wrong with being grateful that I have a roof over my head and food on my table when others don't. Nothing wrong with that. Personally, I find it helpful to articulate what I'm thankful for in the ritual of saying grace before the day's main meal. Now, I was raised as a Catholic. My mother insisted we say grace every single night. As a kid, I resented it. My father would kid about it, and his grace would be, good God, good me, good God, bless you. At this point in my life, though, I really do find that ritual to be very meaningful. What am I grateful for? Not just Thanksgiving as we hold hands and go around the table, or whatever our Thanksgiving ritual is, but on a daily basis. The third discipline of the heart is compassion. Compassion, again, is core to Buddhism. It's the sense of concern that arises when we are confronted with another's suffering and are motivated to see that suffering relieved. Compassion is what connects the feeling of empathy to acts of kindness, generosity, and other expressions of altruism. It asks the question, can I make your pain more bearable? Bishop Tudor points out that we are wired to care for one another. And when we go against that fundamental law of our being, whether we like it or not, it's going to be deleterious. Compassion can be challenging, very, very challenging. This is especially true when confronted by realities that make us uncomfortable or even bring up disgust and anger. I remember, when I was thinking about this, I remember I had such a vivid recollection of being at a little league game. My son was born, and this father screaming at his kid because he dropped a fly ball. That man got so angry. I was disgusted by his behavior. How do I find compassion for that? How do I find compassion for some of the things I hear people say? It's a challenge being able to do that. It's not for the weak-hearted, that discipline of the heart. The fourth discipline of the heart is generosity. Bishop Tudor calls it a way of being in the world where we work towards becoming an oasis of peace, a pool of serenity that ripples out to all of us. It's being generous with ourselves. It's like that chant that we have on our, I think it's in the break room. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and by this we live. Familiar with that? It's a beautiful chant. Generosity is moving away from being egocentric. It's being generous with ourselves, giving of ourselves. It's releasing a competitive view of the world. It's seeing us all in it together. Now, the fly on the wall for this was Doug Abrams. And he sees them all coming together as a holistic way of experiencing joy. Now, this morning, I hope I have brought you some tidings of great joy. The good news, joy is possible. All it takes is a little discipline. 8 habits. 8 of the month, for the mind, for the heart. Do those, and you're doing them free. I suggested at the beginning that you probably would not remember all 8. In fact, if you did, you're quite ashamed. Along the way, perhaps 1 or 2 of them will resonate. Whereas you approach the holidays, as you reflect upon Advent, you might say to yourself, there are a couple that I could really do some work with. So let me just repeat. Habits of mind: perspective, humility, humor, and acceptance. Habits of the heart: forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, and generosity. Why not learn from these two masters? They believe we are meant to be joyful. However, do I know that? Do I deep down in my soul, in my core, know that I am meant to be joyful? Can I entertain that possibility? Perhaps if I can, these two old dudes have laid out a roadmap for me. And I can start to think about following that roadmap. May just help me get it. Please stand as you're willing and able, and let's sing together hymn 128, For All That Is Our Life. Please be seated.
Please join in reading the words in order of ceremony. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
These are the words of Eric Williams. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive from going. Truly, blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace.
We are a new generation from the ones who were there before. He's calling us